So we're in the on-ramp to Mobile World Congress 2020 in Barcelona, and as ever, I'm here ahead of the show with Gabriel Brown from Heavy Reading to talk about some of the key themes we can expect to hear about at the show. So, Gabriel, from your perspective, it's Mobile World Congress, but really, in a way, it's the 5G World Congress. What are you expecting to be talking to people about at the show? What are you expecting to hear?
So I think we're going into it in a pretty positive mood. There's a lot of excitement around 5G network and service launches in 2019. Going into 2020, we have good momentum. However, I do think it's a kind of a period where the industry really has to focus on the hard work, the really hard work of scaling the technology.
Yeah.
Pretty much in every dimension, but particularly looking at coverage, extending the number of devices available, adding features and capability to the networks as they roll out. That's all perhaps a little less glamorous than, for example, robotic surgery or whatever the use case is. But I think it's really, really important work. We know how important the mobile broadband infrastructure is now. And in some ways, you can think 5G is modernizing one of the most important platforms for digital business anywhere.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So a general sort of a positive feel about 5G. What about the specifics? In terms of the kind of things that you look at on a day-to-day basis. What are the in the radio access network, for example? What are the key trends you're seeing and you're going to be talking to people about?
So probably the most interesting trend, actually kind of identified and picked this up last year, but I think it really comes to the fore, is the transition to standalone 5G operation with a 5G core and so forth. That's a kind of a system application, and it impacts devices, radios, core networks, transport and so forth. So there's lots of moving parts. But several of the US operators have said they want to get some form of standalone working in 2020, one or two Chinese. And I think SKT in South Korea as well has announced a trial a couple of weeks ago. So I think that's a big theme. Within that, in the round, then we start to think about, well, how do you get enough coverage to support standalone? You need to actually be able to do uplink. You need to be able to do all the control plane functions, so forth. Probably that will end up involving low band spectrum.
Okay.
If you think about where we are today with mid-band and millimeter wave, it's quite limited coverage. I think low band helps a lot with that.
Yeah.
Potentially, in some markets, dynamic spectrum sharing as well.
Okay. Excellent. So, obviously there's been a lot of activity around the radio access network in 2019. But of course, we're still waiting for some final specifications and the introduction of 5G specific core network capabilities. I guess that's probably going to be a big talking point in Barcelona as well, is it?
Yeah, I think it's really the moment for 5G core. I mean, obviously the architecture's there, specifications are there, but actually we'll start seeing a lot more in terms of kind of concrete, concrete metaphorically, of course, product that operators can start to deploy. Now, maybe not GA, but I think we're going to see from lots of vendors cloud native 5G core offers. Okay. This whole idea of cloud native is really starting to be introduced in 2020. I don't think it goes whole hog, but lots of activity around that I would expect.
Okay. And where do you see the whole topic of open source, I guess, in general, coming into play here? Because things kind of heated up towards the end of 2019. Some announcements around Open RAN from the operator as well as the vendor perspective. Do you think that is still perhaps a little bit of a sort of an outlier, or is it becoming part of more general discussions and strategic thinking?
I mean, I think it's the latter. I think we kind of they're linked, but not necessarily always the same as open source and open interfaces. So we could make that distinction. I think the momentum we've had with Open
networking,
RAN,
maybe
open networking in the Open RAN sense, the momentum there has actually been very strong since we talked about this last year. There's been really encouraging pickup from operators. The product development's doing okay, and it's actually gone faster than I had expected. I think the challenge a little bit is going to be turning on, the you know how these markets work. You get a rush of enthusiasm. Everyone does a few POCs and trials. They go, yeah, this looks pretty good. But in the end, you know, they don't stick and do the big deployment because it's not quite ready. And there's other kind of...
it's a bit of a stick at the moment to beat the main major vendors with, in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a little bit. And I think it's also about this idea of vendor diversity, which has become like a really key thing in mobile networking in general. In wireline, not so much, because you do have more options. When you talk about 5G mobile, you know, you're limited to a few vendors. So I think that's politically become very important.
Yeah. But there are actually, I mean, it's not just PowerPoint stuff. This is going into networks and actually delivering service in some markets. So there's proof points to be had, isn't there?
Yeah, it's going in at this point in pretty small quantity, shall we say, confined areas and so forth. That we can expect. The question is, how do we scale from, you know, doing a small, you know, a small town in Turkey to doing, say, Manhattan? You know, it's a gulf between them still.
Very much so.
So, you know, that it can have. One of the things I'll be doing at MWC actually is I'm going to be hosting the O-RAN Alliance CTO panel.
Oh, nice.
I think that's on a Tuesday. Check your calendars. So there we'll have the CTOs of the major operators who are behind the O-RAN Alliance. Did it last year, so this year will be an update from them on how they think it's gone, what they need to encourage, and so forth.
Yeah. Okay.
The other thing they'll be involved with in some form is the TIP Open RAN project group and various RAN initiatives within a telecom infra project. I think they're also going to be making a bit of noise at the show about, you know, progress they've made and what their forward roadmap is.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So lots of things moving the market forwards, and of course this is all absolutely vital to all of the world's hundreds of mobile operators. So be interested to hear as well after the event what you think the key takeaways and key themes of the event have been, and where we head for the rest of the year. So, Gabriel, thanks very much.
Sure, thank you, Ray. I'm sure there'll be a lot of things we didn't talk about will blow up as big.
Of course. I hope so.